points that I always use and cross-reference sort of the proxemics and the proxemics theory and these spaces around us. The interesting thing, I think, what he did in that time in the 60s, he was measuring it, but not by digital means, but by the use of a stick. So he used a physical stick and he was measuring these spaces between people, culture to culture and person to person sort of. So basically I took that, research back to me, and I'm using these sensors, proximity sensors, ultrasonic rangefinders, all kinds of sensors. And I try to do this again, but then by digital means. So really using sort of his research and translating that to digital. So the cool thing about this this project for me is using ultrasonic rangefinders, which I already did. If you can see here the little animation, which you can see in the right, if I have a person in front of me, that's cool. I can see that person. I see it as a blob, sort of, you know. So if I have multiple people in front of me, in that case, like the spider dress doesn't define, okay, there's multiple people in front of me in this case. So what I did now is, you can see here the distance to person I can measure, the speed to person. How many people I can measure, I cannot. So in this project, actually, I took a thermal camera as well. And for this for the means to measure, to do some heat mapping and to measure these people in front of me. And then, the more people, this dress will respond and create that sort of kind of barrier. So what I have is the thermal sensor doesn't define the distance to person, the speed to person, but it does define how many people. So if you combine these two sensors, you can basically have both your distance to person, speed to person, and also how many people are in front of you. So that's kind of the cool thing. The other cool thing, what I think, and I have 20 seconds left, is that I could have done this with cameras, for example, as well, but I choose not to, because I think, sort of that goes into the notion of privacy, sort of, you know, really scanning people, really recording people. So my ultrasonic rangefinders and my thermal sensors are doing the same recordings, but anonymous. So the data is totally anonymous, while I still get out of it what I want. And that's a little bit also, what I always try to consider and reconsider there. So that is it for me. I'm over my time. So if you have questions, drop them for any of us in the Q&A underneath the Zoom link. And in my case, here's also my email address.
Thank you, Anouk. That was great. We did have one question. What are you using for the smoke?
The smoke, according to sensors, I'm using ultrasonic rangefinders as well, like multiple around to really see the people around. The smoke the smoke gas has 6 versions, and in the latest version is a really small system. It's 500 grams, if I translate it well, and it's in a hot nozzle and a silicon fluid, which I basically heat up, and that creates the smoke. And then I bounce LEDs through it to make different colors. Nice. So it's like a tiny little fog machine. That's so adorable. That's great. Okay, thank you. Moving on. Let's see. Do we have John back? I don't see him. All right. Anuradha, are you ready? Are you on? I am. Great. Our next speaker. Hi. Good evening, everybody. And she's got a drive-by gallery, which sounds great.
Yeah, the project is Drive by Art, and I'm excited to explain it to you. So I was one of 4 organizers. Let me just confirm everybody can see these slides. Can everybody see that?
Not quite.
This is weird. It says sharing is paused. Bring your shared window to the front. How strange. Okay, let's try that one more time. How about now?
Good.
What?
Yes, we got it.
Okay, great. So Drive by Art was conceived originally by Warren Nidich, who is an artist based in Los Angeles, Berlin, and the Hamptons, New York. He did a version over a weekend in East Hampton in early May. The idea behind it was to try to bring some life back into the quarantine. At that point, everybody had been cooped up for a couple of months, and artists had seen a lot of opportunities canceled. And so the original impetus for Drive by Art came from drive-by graduations, drive-by funerals, drive-by weddings. that were people responding to the need to socially distance while still feeling that their lives sort of had to keep going. And so he reached out to me, and then we built a team with Renee Petropoulos and Michael Slensky, and the four of us ultimately organized this project. We don't like to say that we curated the project because we really feel that we created a platform, and then we invited artists to seize it. So I think, in terms of, doing things with electricity, what we're doing here obviously is driving, which, could be debated in terms of its merits, but it's certainly a way that we experience our landscape in Los Angeles. And so one of the amazing things about the quarantine was that for once in our lives, there's been not really any traffic in Los Angeles. So we got it into our heads that we could cover a lot of territory over 2 weekends, and we ended up dividing it into an east side of Los Angeles and west side of Los Angeles pair of weekends. So we decided the first one was Memorial Day weekend. It was a 3-day weekend. And what we did was we did the east side of Los Angeles with the dividing line being at Western. So that covered neighborhoods like Silver Lake, Koreatown, Highland Park, downtown. And we ended up having about, I think 60, 70 artists participate. There were a lot of artists involved. I was only able to get to a certain number, and that's actually what I'm showing you today, which is good because that's a good way to keep it to 8 minutes. So this is Robbie Herbst with his often collaborator here, Alana Mann. The two of them did a vocal performance that was related to this image, and then they kept the banner up, and they did. So we had some timed performances, and we would advertise that. There was a night of projections. There was one scheduled for the east side over Memorial Day weekend, and then there was one scheduled for the west side over the following weekend. So just moving through, I'll show you a few of the images. So what we had was artists essentially working at or near their homes or their studios, which really demonstrated the fact that there are artists everywhere in Los Angeles and a wide variety of work, because we weren't really regulating what kind of work. We were inviting artists based on what we knew they did. And then what they proposed to do, we pretty much always said yes. Again, organizing more than curating. So I have a couple of little video clips to show you. Here's the first. This is Corey Newkirk's work. Corey Newkirk is known for making work that applies objects from, the objects that he uses are sort of everyday objects. So I think this one is actually made out of cellophane audio tape, and it's a kinetic sculpture. I'm just going to show you. There we go. Okay. So this is actually in an alleyway in downtown Los Angeles, and I drove underneath it and shot this out of essentially the windshield of my car to try to get the perspective that he wanted most, which was that drive-through perspective. So some of the objects are actually drive-through, some of them are drive-in, and we thought about that as well in terms of, ultimately we chose the title of Drive-By Art because of, as I said, all of these public events that were already using that idea.
Unfortunately, we can't see the video, so if you could just describe it.
Oh, it didn't play? Okay, didn't we test this?
Apparently
I'm doing
not.
exactly what we tested, but maybe not. Let me try it again. Now you guys just see me, right? Let's try this. Ugh, sorry.
Seems to be working now.
Yeah. I know what I did wrong. I'm sorry. Let me try playing that one more time. But just for a second. There it is. Okay.
Okay.
And then some artists really wanted to work in a social way. and responded to the isolation of the quarantine by creating ways to interact. So here's Christine Skowmaker with her project called The Artist Is In, based of course on the Peanuts cartoon and Lucy's little psychiatrist booth. So she hung out and invited people to come and have socially distanced interactions with her, which of course here you can see my 4-year-old son violating the 6-foot distancing rule, but at least keeping his mask on. So, you know, for us, it was actually the first time we had been out. We went out this weekend in, as I said, over 2 months. And everybody was sort of like seeing each other with new eyes, which was pretty interesting. And again, this is really a platform. So for example, this is at the Brewery, which is an artist studio building in Los Angeles. And they have their own whole program. They had other artists who were participating in a different drive-by art event called We Are Here, which Jordan and Ray put on. So we weren't even the only people doing this, but we got a lot of attention for doing it because people were so starved for art, honestly. And everybody that I saw while I was out conveyed that this was satisfying something that they were really missing a lot in their daily experience. This is artist Danny Dodge, who's also at the Brewery here with the installation of paper boats that she created and installed all the way up and down the block. Here's Yasmin Diaz. So for Yasmin, she was actually supposed to open her first major solo exhibition of work at a museum in Detroit, the Arab American National Museum in Dearborn, Michigan. I'm sorry, not quite Detroit. Unfortunately, it was installed, but it never got to open because of the COVID quarantine. And so we basically by accident ended up being the first to premiere this body of work. And I just really want to show you this lovely video that I have of it because it did some things outdoors that I think the artist would never have otherwise experienced in her work. Because in a museum, you would just never see this. So here's the piece. What she's doing is there's a kind of dress that is very popular in Yemen, which is where she's from, and in Yemeni and Somali communities in the United States. I think it's called a deer, and it's made of this burnout fabric, the burnout velvet fabric. And so what she does is she takes the silk velvet and she uses the burnout technique to imprint these photographic images that are taken from archives of Yemeni immigrants from their adolescence in the United States. And the work is all about culture clash and sexual awakening and memory and nostalgia, and also like a very traumatic experience for this artist of having had to break with her family in order to live in a manner that felt true to her values. And so there's always a kind of a melancholy to it. And so these are stretched over stretcher bars for a museum presentation, but here for drive-by art, she actually hung them in this triangle in Silver Lake's little triangle park as if they were out on a clothesline. And so they become sculptural objects instead, where they reference the dress itself and its kind of materiality, and then they blow rather lovely, I think, in the wind. So you get a sense of space here. You can see through the works, which they are transparent. Sometimes she's doing that in the wall installation version because she's got the fabric behind it, as you can see here in the center. But on the other hand, as I said, you know, this is really a view of the object and a way of understanding the object that under normal circumstances, the artist might never have had. So the next artist I'm going to show you is Alice Wang, and let me just check on time.
We're running a little
I shared
short.
my screen, I can't see it. How am I?
We're running a little short. Got a minute.
About a minute. Okay, so I'm just going to skip ahead real quick. Alice Wang is an artist who's also a mathematician, so she likes to put out very simple things, but also equations for people to think about. There's obviously a philosophical equation. Tin Flats, which is an artist studio, had a group of artists who participated. This one's more of a drive-in. You pulled in, looked around. And Karen Lofgren, here's a sculptor who installed her work in her driveway. Here's Shauna Lucker outside her studio. And of course, you see people masking, social distancing, and having a social moment for the first time in a couple months. Now, I want to jump over here. This is actually the weekend one. This is Kong Soon Lee. This is at Occidental Arts in Highland Park. And actually, it was at Occidental Arts that we found the only pushback around our choice of the name Drive-By Art, which is that a group of community activists in Highland Park felt that this was insensitive to the history of drive-by shootings that had traumatized some people in the area. To which we said, look, we're a bunch of individual people throwing together a project by the seat of our pants. to try to create some energy and to capitalize in a way on something that other people are already doing. For example, the weekend that we did this show, the LA Times ran a story about a 100-year-old woman's drive-by birthday party. And they didn't even put drive-by in quotes. So we kind of had a difference of opinion, but it was an interesting conversation about what is the responsibility of an organization like Occidental Arts, which is an offshoot of Occidental College, in terms of how they show up with the community and whether they can be provocative in a way with language that we felt as individuals organizing something with artists we had no problem being. But this is Kansuli's piece called La Revolución es la Solución. And of course, the reason that I want to end here in the first weekend is to let you know that by the time we did the second weekend in West Los Angeles, everything in the world had changed. So as we remember, George Floyd was killed by Minneapolis police over the weekend of Memorial Day. And so the following week, which was the week between our two segments, was a very volatile and emotional week for the entire country, and no less so for Los Angeles. This is artist Yernay Gabon, who did a performance, very moving performance about this death and others. This is a memorial to Ahmaud Arbery, whose killers were indicted today. So we were responding. I have a video, it's up on my Instagram, and I'm just gonna refer you to it because I'm out of time, but I do have a great video of this entire piece. It's a live performance, it's 8.5 minutes, extremely powerful, done here in the artist's front yard. We had a slate of video projections at night slated for West Los Angeles that Saturday night. Unfortunately, after the events that took place at Pan Pacific Park in the Grove on Saturday morning, it ended up that they set a curfew for the city and for Santa Monica. And then there was some activity, I think, at Santa Monica Promenade. And so unfortunately, we had to cancel those those presentations for Saturday night, and we were never able to reschedule them. But we did have some really wonderful work that went on during the day that was already responding to what was happening around us. So the last video I'm going to show you just a tiny snippet of.
I think we're out of time, but thank you.
Okay, so then I'll just say that there's some other really wonderful artists that I could show you, many of whom are African American. So I'm just going to flip through them real quick, and then we're going to be done. And we would probably like to see more opportunities for artists to share their work outside of the gallery, museum, and generally indoors going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Alejandra. That was great. Okay, just reminding everybody, if you've just joined us, this is dorkbot, people doing strange things with electricity and stranger things without electricity. Our next speaker up is Jay, who makes these amazing companion bots. And I'm just going to let Jay take over. Jay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Hi, I'm Jay. I'm a tinker. I'm weird that way. My project, or at least multiple of my projects, are robots that I have called, or have been called from other people and other things I've gotten into, companion bots. But you're probably asking as well as a companion bot. So for me, a companion bot is literally a robot friend. It's a robot you can either put on you as a wearable and travel around with you, or a robot you can just have with you to make you feel a little more comfortable in situations you don't feel comfortable in, which for me means every time I walk outside the house. So I work on a lot of different types of robots. One of my biggest robots, and I count as my familiar, is this guy right here, who is known as Dexter. Dexter is this monkey robot that I built, move the camera a little bit, not too long ago. He's fun. He likes to act up sometimes and not work for me. But this was my COVID-19 project at the beginning of COVID, since people were laid off, and I wasn't really laid off, but my hours were cut extensively. So I had a lot of time to sit around and just work on my projects. So I decided to sit around and actually decide to make this robot my actual COVID project, because I was hoping this whole thing would be over by the time this project was done. So it's just like my fourth integration of this robot. It took me a little while to get it all together. And then I finished them, and then we weren't any at a better place. So I kept building. So I always start off with, like, of course, a quick sketch, because I have an artist background. So I always carry my sketchbook with me. I sit around, I sketch things. I sketch out the design I might want, that I think of colors and those type of things. Yeah, and thanks to a lot of these situations, I've been kind of like pushing my whole thing a little bit more. I'm not sure if you move up a bit. If you can kind of see up there a bit, I have a whole bunch of other robots that I just kind of kept building and continuously build. And even recently, I took one of my older robots and I turned them into a little roller robot for my nephews to play with. So yeah, just little fun stuff here and there. Yeah, sorry, I got off of work and just came to this and was like, okay, this would be fun. This would be no problem. But yeah, my main goal is mostly just to help inspire people to build more robots, to, go out, have some fun, come up with your own designs, or even copy my designs. I'm really bad at documenting, but I always get to it eventually. So I'll do my best to always go back, document everything I can, and try to explain exactly how I built it and all the processes and things that way I can share it online. Because I definitely am a person who believes in everything should be, well, not everything, but most things should be open source because it's very educational. So I'm really proud to just be able to help push this idea of just having fun robots to go around and do things and have fun with. Yeah, I'm pretty sure when it comes to talk.
That's awesome. Boy, I have so many questions. What's inside the bots? We're going to geek out here a little bit because we're all dorks. What's making them go?
I use a lot of Adafruit technology. So Trinket, Pro Trinket, and then of course Arduino. He's actually being controlled by Pro Trinket, Arduino Nano, and another thing that I can't really remember right now. That's my bad. Yeah.
No worries.
Yeah, that's my bad.
Jay, we can find you on Twitter and Instagram.
Yeah, under the name OddJ, 2 I's. I'm on both Twitter and I'm on Instagram. I'm happy to talk more about my work. If anyone wants to talk about it, I'm happy to give help when I can. I do the best I can because I really wish to see people create more robots.
Yeah, how cool to have a little ally that can sit on your shoulder. I want one. Do we have any questions for Jay? Type them in the chat.
Yeah, I have a lot of time left. Sorry, guys. I really think
it's good. It's good.
I feel like I should have came prepared with slides, maybe some cookies or something. I don't. My robots are capable of. A lot of my robots are capable of. This one, he can do high fives. He has actually a sensor on his arm, mostly for because I always think of kids a lot of time with my robots because they have the best reactions to seeing robots. So what makes this Dexter special is that he can high five, and it's kind of a thing someone can come and be like, hi, high five. So that's always really fun. I have a mini version of him that is also up on my shelf that has a camera in his eye, which I know a lot of people don't like being filmed or camera or anything like that. So to fix that problem, I put a button on his hand. So we press the button, he'll take a picture, and that's the only way to take a picture because I don't want to accidentally make anyone uncomfortable with taking a picture or anything like that. Do they talk? Only one that technically talks is Aussie back here. He has a small microphone on him that I programmed to do R2D2 signs or sounds. So every time my nephews will talk to him or make a noise next to him, he'll reply, and they just assume he's talking. So it's kind of fun watching them try to figure out his language. But yeah, so yeah.
Turns out there's a whole nother rich vein of questions in the Q&A session. So I can just, I'll read a couple. Where can we find tutorials to make one?
Hackster.io. A lot of my work is on Hackster. They're really great people. I always post on there because it's easier for me.
Awesome. Hackster.io.
Yes.
And another question, have you exhibited at Maker Faire?
Yeah, I did one Maker Faire last year at the last San Francisco Bay Area Maker Faire with Alex Bowe. That was the last one I was able to do right now before COVID happened. So sadly, I haven't been able to do more. Oh, and Hackaday, SuperCon. Sorry, I almost forgot about that. It's very busy time.
Good. Last question. What is your design process like? How do you choose what to build?
My design process is kind of like, I got this from my art school. It's a character design process. So the first thing I always think of when I'm designing a robot, I always think of what type of aesthetic I want to go with. So if I want to go with a space aesthetic, or steampunk aesthetic, any type of aesthetic like that, I'll think of that design. I'll get some inspiration from Pinterest, that type of thing, and then I'll go from there. And I just follow the 5 steps of character design of, do I want it to be tall? Do I want it to be short? Do I want it to be cute? Do I want it to be ugly? Do I want it to do the things? And then I just kind of mix everything else up to do a whole bunch of different stuff.
All right. We got a question to show your steampunk watch. Is that something you can do?
I know it's actually on my shelf, but I can't really grab it right now. Next time, it's definitely on there.
Okay, no worries, no worries. All right, anything, you're based in LA, is that right?
Yes, I am in LA.
Okay, are places we should look for you if and when things open up, or?
Invite me out and we'll get coffee.
Right. I think there's a hacker drink up down in LA. Is that right?
If there is, I don't know about it, and if it is, you should send me an invitation. Just saying.
All right. There's also Crash Space, the hacker space. I don't know if that's.
Oh yeah, I am from Crash Space. They are my main maker space.
Sweet. All right. Anything else we need to know, or?
Nope, you guys are great.
All right, so are you. Thanks. Stoked to introduce you to the dorkbot community. So Odd J, and that's with 2 Ds and 2 Ys on Instagram and Twitter. Is that right?
Yep.
All right, awesome. Thank you. Great. All right, thanks, Jay. All right, next up, I think we have Graham. Graham, are you there?
Yeah, hi, Jonathan. Hey, can you hear me?
Yes. All right, just gonna stick the 2 cents in that if you're just watching us, this is Dorkbot. I'm the MC. My name's John Foote. Everybody else is doing the cool stuff. I'm just the interstitial entertainment. Take it away, Graham. Oh wait,
Great.
I should introduce you. That's my job. All right. So Graham is a professor at California College of the Arts, and he first told me about this project using the ferrofluid a couple of years ago, and it sounded really cool and really challenging. So I'm stoked to see where you've taken it. So take it away.
Yeah, the truth is, it's been more than a couple of years. That's very generous of you. It's still going. It's getting there. I'm gonna just share a screen. Here we go. Whoa! Can you see? Can you see that?
Yes.
Oil. Okay, great. Thanks, Jonathan. Okay, so I'm going to talk about a project I've been working on for a few years called the Magnetic Letterpress. Before I do, just a few words about me, my story. So in my day-to-day job, I do 2 things. I design museum exhibitions, designing the sort of interactive part of that. Sometimes those are very immersive spaces. The one on the left here is for a children's hospital. But I'm very interested in the way in which you can combine physical with the digital, the tangible. So you sort of return back to the body, and you can use your senses again. So it's not just about the screen. And I also teach interaction design at CCA. My focus there is on natural user interfaces and tangible user interfaces. So we teach the students to prototype. You see sort of low fidelity prototyping, mid-level, high fidelity prototyping here. Proud to say one of our students, Tara, is in the emerging designer competition winner in Primer 2020. That's on right now. So just to give you a little bit of background on the art that I make, this is a project that I began a few years ago. It's called the Reactive Cube. It combines water with a oil that stays suspended in water and projected light. So it's kind of like, I'd say you call it like a 2.5D display, not quite 3D. It's like a extrusion through there. And the way you interact with it is through gesture. And on this next slide, I just want to give a shout out to Karen, because she worked with me at the Stochastic Labs over in Berkeley about 3 years ago. And she did the coding for this piece here, which also responds to gesture. This is like another version of the cube. And we developed a sort of gestural language in which you interact using your hands. And then briefly, this is something that's on show right now at the French consul's residence in San Francisco. I just want to mention this because sometimes I find my sort of inspiration in the sort of history of materials. And so this piece has a bit of a weird story, but it's a map of the world made from the sunburnt skin peeled from my backside when I was on vacation in Mexico. So this is kind of a joke on the stupidity of this white man on vacation in a country that had been historically colonized by Europeans. So this is just leading to the magnetic letterpress, and here I'm trying to find, well, here I built a machine that uses oil, magnetic oil, to write words. So what you're looking at is a machine that has 180 rare earth magnets on pistons that move up and down. And as they get closer to the oil, they sort of move into these mounds that when I move them up in different there's another part of it which is above head height, which is a screen. And I think in this next video, hopefully this will play. Yeah. This is like a prototype video, but what you're looking at here is the machine running through some test sequences. So I'm sort of testing it spelling words. And you can see it has a sort of strange sort of interplay between the sort of hard electronics and the way the oil behaves as well. So depending on how I move those magnets up and down, I get sort of different effects. I'm just going to fast forward this video to about here. I don't really have very good footage of this yet, but the idea is that I'm going to interview a series of people who will talk about topics in relation to climate, in relation to energy, in relation to how we define and think about progress, and how they maybe are questioning the dogmas around technological progress. And I'm going to film them, and they're going to appear in the rear projected screen, and they will appear sort of in this sort of depthless void, as you can kind of see in this image here, sort of floating up, almost like it feels a bit like a sort of oracle. This thing, it's like you're sort of getting these sort of words of wisdom from this infinite depth. Moving on, that's kind of the sort of reality of the situation. That's my apartment with a scaffold there right now, and I've just enlarged the screen so you get a better reflection in there, and there's a projector up above it. So very briefly, the material is ferrofluid. It was developed years ago in '63 by NASA, and ferrofluid reacts to magnetic fields. So the way I designed this thing was to try and sculpt a magnetic field. I began by playing with electromagnets, which required way too much power, plus the shape wasn't quite right for what I wanted. So I moved on to magnets that were already magnetized. So these are great because they're always on. You don't need any power. The problem is they're always on, so they're never off. So the challenge was sort of moving them away from the oil. So the prototype here is, well, actually the first prototype I made a few years ago, solenoids basically pumping these things up and down. And that led eventually to a font, a series of prototypes, machines. I found actually electric car antennas were fantastic as linear actuators, dead cheap and quite reliable. And actually, Jonathan, I think you helped me a little bit here, along with Michael Shilo and Scott Miniman, on developing the circuit. And that was like the second prototype. These were the circuits that I built, got into 3D printing. As much printing as possible, actually, sort of printing in metal, printing in plastic, printing on PCBs, because there was a lot of fabrication involved. And then this is the sort of final machine here, or one of them. And there's 10 of them plus one spare for that time, then it goes down on the opening. Also, shout out to Steve Thompson at Stochastic Labs, who also works with Exploratorium and Autodesk Pier 9. Who helped me fabricate it, and also Stephen Brach, who helped design the app that I use to create sequences. This is a sort of what you see is what you get app. And finally, to Greg Cowley, who's currently working with me on developing a way of capturing these interviews using the Microsoft Azure camera, which we feed into DepthKit and then process through Houdini on After Effects. And these are our first prototypes. Okay, so this is Greg doing a quick test here, trying to get sound to match with vision, trying to grab those particles. So that's a kind of overview of where we are. And before I go, I still need help. I rely on the generosity of people who are interested in supporting the arts. And so if you are interested, I'm looking for people who work with open frameworks, and also a musician or a composer or a sound designer as well, because part of making this thing super immersive is to create a sort of sound space around it as well. And the good news is that basically I have in with this museum. This is where I'd love to show it in Rio de Janeiro. This is the Museum of Tomorrow, which is a sort of museum about the Anthropocene, and also still looking for places actually in San Francisco. So that's, did I make the 8 minutes, Johnny?
Yes, just barely.
Right.
We have time for one question, and we got a question is why didn't you use electromagnets instead of the mechanically moving the magnets?
Because they used too much power for what I needed to do. I would have ended, and also because of the aesthetics, the shape. So if I had managed to create that lozenge shape, maybe I could have, and that would have negated the problem for mechanical movement. But yeah, I didn't want the oil to cook, and because with high power comes heat and smoke and all of that, and I just didn't trust myself to use mains electricity basically.
Got it. All right, thank you, Graham. If you have other questions for Graham, go to the Q&A, go to the chat. We're gonna move on, and we're gonna depart from the schedule just a little bit to sneak in Johnny Radio from Boom, who works, all your contributions for tonight's DorkBot are going to his program. And John, are you ready to speak about it?
I sure am. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my Zoom is a little bit slow and I'm trying to share my screen. So please bear with me for a second. Can you see my screen now? Hello?
It's trying something. It's trying something. Waiting for it. Anticipation. Not actually seeing your screen.
Okay, well, on this side it tells me you can see my screen, but okay. I'm just going to proceed with my prepared statement, and hopefully the screen will come up.
There we go. There we go. I'm seeing some.
You're seeing it?
Yeah.
Okay, then let me just restart that. Okay, here we go. Okay, I'm going to start out with a little story. Hi, everybody. Amazing presentations, and I feel very privileged to be a part of this community. There's a neighborhood in San Francisco called Bayview Hunters Point. It's a marginalized, low-income community with a history of gun violence. A few weeks ago, I was walking down the street through Bayview, and a Black teen from the neighborhood approached me and asked me if I could spare $10. Sorry, I replied, I can't spare it. He demanded, show me what's in your backpack. I ran, and I blamed myself. I should have been mentoring that same young man every week. Then he wouldn't be trying to jack people on street corners. The Boom did a pilot program over about 3 years, leading about 40 teens through the process of building boomboxes. We proved kids in the hood can and will solder, populate circuit boards, screw, glue, paint, and assemble. We have a mountain of photos and videos to prove it. But the Boom youth experience only has impact if our apprentices are building something powerful, rugged, reliable, and functional. Our boombox is our classroom and our textbook. We can't engage our teens in entrepreneurship unless our boombox is awesome enough to sell. The problem is the device we were building had serious design flaws. So I stopped youth workshops in order to re-engineer our boombox, both the mechanical side as well as the electrical. Since then, we've resolved almost all of our design challenges, but there are a few things left to finish up before we can restart youth workshops. We need makers and engineers who have the real world hands-on experience to competently design and prototype viable solutions. We have baseline designs that just need to be finished up by people who know what they're doing. Tom Zimmerman, I'm speaking to you. Teenagers in the hood say to me all the time, "Hey, John, when are we going to get back to building boomboxes? You got my hopes up. I'm ready to solder." Now, these are teens who have options. They can play with guns, sell methamphetamine, do petty crimes, join a gang, go to prison, wind up dead. And their first choice is to build boomboxes. Unfortunately, I have to say to them, sorry, our boombox redesign is stalled because I can't find the engineering talent to finish the engineering. Sorry, I can't get any volunteers who are willing to commit 2 hours a week for a couple of months. Since I have found it very difficult to attract dedicated volunteer engineers and makers, our teenagers are left to choose their other options: guns, dangerous drugs, crime, prostitution, and violence. And I'm not exaggerating. Engineers, do you think I'm trying to guilt trip you? I am. Step up. You can spare a couple of hours a week on your own time at your own location for just a couple of months to change the lives of teens in crisis. Email john@theboom.org or go to theboom.org and click contact. From the bushing and cams of my heart, my humble gratitude to Gray Area, Dorkbot, Karen Moncello, and to everyone who made a donation to the Boom today.
All right, thank you, John. And I think there's a donation link in the chat. If you scroll up in the chat, you can find out how to donate to the Bayview Boom. And of course, all the proceeds from tonight's proceedings are going to Bayview Boom. So thank you for that, John. And that presentation segues pretty well into Tom Zimmerman, who is next on deck. Tom is a master inventor at IBM Almaden Research, and he's going to talk about MP3 players, which probably have a little boom in them. Tom, you take it away.
Exactly. John, do you find yourself wanting to make a boombox? Or Jorvin, do you find yourself wanting to make your robots talk? Well, I have a solution for you. Spending a lot of time at home looking for a project? Can you solder 6 wires together reliably? Well, I've got the perfect solution from you. If you go on this website that starts with the letter A, you can get this cool device. I'm going to show you how I made a jukebox, which I just found out was Creole for juke, which means disorderly, rowdy, and wicked. So if you've got music that describes those words, this project's for you. It's also about recycling things and reusing things. So here's what I got. So I saw this ad on a popular website, 5 of these little boards for 14 bucks. And if you can see my camera here, here's one of them. And it's basically a few chips on a circuit board, and you put an SD card in with all of your music. I have about 7 gigs of music, and each gig is 1 day, 24 hours of music. So this thing will hold a month of your music, 24/7 times 30. And it's $3. And what's really wild is you just hook up a speaker to it. It has an amplifier built in. So that's the cat's pajamas. So here's what you do. You get these, and you have to buy 5. And so that means you make 5 of them, give 4 of them away. So that's pretty cool. And so here's how it works. You basically need a battery or better yet, a charger for a cell phone, which you probably have a few of them around because every year you seem to buy a new phone. You need a SD card, and then you can harvest a speaker. A lot of us have these leftover 5+1 systems that we don't use anymore. Well, gee, there's your 5 speakers. Or if you have, go to Goodwill or Saver, and for a few bucks you get a broken boombox. All you need are the speakers. And so here's the board I'm talking about. You put in your SD card here, and you apply power. You hook up the speaker wire directly to the chip, and then you add 2 buttons. And the 2 buttons have the following function. When you turn it on, you push the next button, it'll play the next song. And if you hold it down, it gets louder. If you push the other button, it plays the last song. And if you hold it down, it gets quieter. That's it. That's version 1. If you know simple soldering, you can build that. Now, version 2, I thought, well, I get tired of hearing my 1 day's worth of music in the same sequence. So I thought the simplest way to make it randomly select was take a microprocessor like an Arduino and basically just randomly push the next button every time it finishes playing a song. And it finished playing a song because this line busy goes high when it finished playing a song. And so I built it, and I'll show you how I built it. I took this box my daughter gave me. Every time she breaks something, she has this sweet way of saying, Dad, here's something for you to do your next invention with. And so I can't complain, and I take the broken device and put it in the garage. So when I got this chip, I went to the garage and pulled out this iHome thing, which had chocolate on it. So now I know why it broke. And I basically found it had a 5-volt supply in it. So I harvest that here. And here's the little sound chip. And where's my microprocessor? There's my Arduino. And so here's, and I put some cool lights in the front because lights are really cool. And so here's the device working. Now, be careful. I heard this is really loud, so get ready on your volume controls. So this is me turning it on. And I gave it a long delay just to make sure it booted up. It turns out you only need about 1/3 of a second. And that's what the blue light means, it has power. It's randomly sticking its hand. And do you hear Marvin Gaye? Okay, now, we could wait till it finished the song, but to quickly show you it randomly selecting, I turn it off again. That's a different song. And now I'm pushing the next.
We're not actually getting the audio. So.
Oh, well, you can see me moving, right? All right, well, oh, you know what? I forgot to push the button that turns it on. But trust me, I'm an honest guy. It really was playing different Marvin Gaye songs, okay? You could tell by the different ways I moved. Okay, let's go on. All right, well, now, the thing about inventing is things don't always work the first or second time. And that one sucked because the more I had to wait to go into the songs, and they're about 330, the longer, I waited. So I bit the bullet, and it turns out programming this thing isn't bad. It has a serial port, this receive wire, and you actually use less wires this way. So really, you just have the busy wire, and when that goes high, that means it's time to play the next one. And you hook the serial port output of the Arduino into the receive of the chip. And this is the website that's really important to look at. Credit where credit's due. This dude wrote the code, so you just download the code from GitHub, and it works. And it tells you how to do it. And I hooked up an RGB LED to make it really pretty. And I added my own next and last buttons. And now what's really cool is I added a pot, a potentiometer, so you could have a volume control. And so this works really well. I prototyped it. Here's the speaker I got. They're really small. They're 5 by 3.5 inch. And I open them up. If you get those 5+1 speakers, sometimes they have a capacitor in series to block out the bass, but you don't have a woofer, so you want the bass. So basically, rip everything off till you have just this 2 speaker leads, which are down here. Hook 2 wires right to the board. 3-watt speakers, any little speaker can handle 3 watts. And it's really loud for just sitting on a desktop, and your neighbors won't hear it, so that's cool. And there's a lot of empty space in here for all your electronics. And just here's my knobs and my 2 buttons. And this is the where I am today. I made it work on a proto board. What's weird is it takes just as much time to do the mechanicals as it does to do the electricals and programming. So that doesn't seem fair. But anyway, so I'm spending just as much time wiring and drilling this up as I am building it. But that's it. So basically, I did it just for playing music, but it can play 28,000 selections. So if you're Jarvan and you have a robot and you wanted to say 28,000 different things in all different languages and expressions, your little microprocessor can figure out which one of those 28,000 phrases to speak. Or if you have a train station and you want to announce the next stop, as some people do, you can do that. So it's up to your imagination. The bottom line is take any speaker from any boombox or device, repurpose it by adding this chip, and shove all your music into it, and you can enjoy music randomly selected for you. Thank you very much.
That was awesome. $3, you say?
Yeah, $3, 5 for 14 bucks.
Great.
Crazy, I know. That's why I had to buy them.
Great. Question, do you use common ground between the Arduino and the DF Player Mini?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
because you're getting a busy line from it and you're sending it data. So you got to have the same ground. Right.
And there's no problems with noise or anything, or?
No, one important thing is that board runs on 3.3 logic, but you can power it by 5. So when you transmit the serial, you got to go through a 1K, or you get, as John is suggesting, noise. So that's the only detail there. Yeah, this schematic is what you want to do. But it's surprisingly loud and good fidelity. And how can you beat that?
Right. That's amazing. Thank you,
Other
Tom.
detailed instructions, yeah, go to this website and thank this guy for writing the code. It's wonderful. It also has 6 different EQ settings. I haven't played with that, but you know, that'll adjust the bass and treble and stuff.
Great, great. Can you drop the link in the chat?
Yes, sir.
Great. And all these links, I think we're going to try and get them on the dorkbotSF.org website, so to preserve them for eternity. So thanks everybody. And all the contact information for people should be on dorkbotsf.org. Once again, big thanks to Karen Marcello for taking care of that and wrangling speakers. Big thanks to Seabrook Gubbins, who is behind the scenes at Gray Area. Thanks to them, Seabrook is helping us make this go as smoothly as it's actually going. So moving on, up next is Spaceman Sam. Spaceman, are you there, Mr.?
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you. So Sam is a cocktail roboticist and a space enthusiast. And if you've ever wondered how we're going to drink cocktails in microgravity, I think Sam has a answer.
Well, I hope so. We'll try. Can I share screen now?
Take it away.
Let's see if this works. All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Many of you know me because over the past few years, I've been doing stuff related to drink bots and outer space stuff and so on. So an old project of mine came back to life recently, and I thought I'd talk about it. The Zero Gravity Cocktail Project. I think some of you already know about it because I think I spoke about it several years ago. I'm basically I call myself a retrofuturist. I've been doing stuff in space and space tourism and steampunk and robots and all sorts of fun little areas. So I'm going to talk about this project. This is one of many crazy ideas I've had over the years related to space and space tourism. I've been involved with a group called the Space Tourism Society for many years. And that group, what we do is that we do lots of research on what we can do to encourage this new type of industry of people living, working, and playing in space and space tourism, such as the stuff that what Elon Musk is doing, what Jeff Bezos is doing, what Richard Branson is doing, especially with Virgin Galactic and so on. All really good people who are trying to push the envelope so that we can all eventually live off world. And so the society has been working on the details of the actual accommodations and the robotics and growing food and entertainment and things like that. This is John Spencer. He's the founder of the Space Tourism Society. He is an actual bona fide space architect. He's been designing habitats for years. He's done science museums and exhibits and programs. And he's also been an advisor for a bunch of documentaries and TV shows. So I worked with him for many years as vice president of the society, just designing concepts and ideas about products and systems. Like, for example, a G chair, a chair that's designed to hold people into place in like a nightclub or bar setting, or the Snuggle Tunnel, which actually got me on TV once. It was basically a place where you can have sex in a confined space without floating away, because, you know, without gravity, guess what? You fly away. We had these ideas of a Mars world style luxury hotel on Earth to simulate what's like on Mars, super yachts, service robots, all sorts of concepts. But one of the concepts, the zero gravity martini glass, came out of this whole brainstorming session I had over the last several years in the early 2000s with John, was developing new ways of drinking. And part of my research was how to start small. How do people live in space right now, and how to make it better? Right now, basically living in space as an astronaut, it's like going on a camping trip. You're roughing it. Everything from doing laundry and cooking, washing hair, going to the bathroom. Everyone knows about going to the bathroom in space is very, very challenging, shall we say. And so we were trying to figure out how to reinvent these simple things that we take for granted here on Earth. You know, when you're washing dishes, big deal. You throw them in the dishwasher, no problem. But in space, not really. It's a lot, you have a lot more problems with things floating around, debris, messes, stinky smells, things like that. One problem they have on the space station is that it stinks. It kind of smells like a Foot Locker because there's not a lot of ventilation. They have to use fans to cause ventilation because there's no convection currents in a zero gravity environment. And that's just one tiny example. So we were doing a lot of research on how can we improve these processes. So meanwhile, along the way, I started dabbling with a thing called cocktail robotics. Here in San Francisco, it became a very big thing where people would invent these wacky devices that can serve drinks in entertaining ways. One of my first ones was called the COSMOBOT. And this is a rocket ship shaped robot that can launches a cosmic cocktail every single time. And it's interactive with the customer. They get to turn the dial and push a big red shiny button and they get a drink made. It was my first exposure to Arduino electronics and building, and that was a lot of fun. So I used that as a stepping stone for a lot of other projects and concepts. And this one was called the Zero Gravity Cocktail Project. What we did was we gathered a team of people, some fantastic engineers and designers, both here in the Silicon Valley and in Hollywood and other places, to design and build a cocktail glass that can work in the weightlessness of space, and that we can market and sell to either for entertainment purposes or novelty purposes, or maybe actually fly one up in space. I worked with some experts who are very good at 3D printing and 3D CAD design, and did some research with some scientists on how to manage fluid flow. And one of the challenges with fluid flow, in fact, I can show you right here, is how do you keep the liquid from floating away? When you pick up a glass of water, well, the water stays in the glass, no problem. Except when you turn the glass upside down, then it spills down. But in space, if you turn that glass of water upside down, quote unquote, upside down, it doesn't go anywhere. It just sits there. It just just sits there. It just doesn't do anything. But if you stir it all up or spin it with your hands or something like that, the liquids will start moving, but it tends to glom onto like your hands or the glass or a wall or some other object. It doesn't it doesn't act like water acts like normally on Earth. You have to kind of find some ways to manipulate it so it go to where you want to go. So with the zero gravity cocktail glass, we put grooves in there, and the grooves are set up in a manner so that you can focus the flow of the fluids to head towards your mouth. And so we worked on some different design ideas, and so we created a drink bot device like the COSMOBOT that would inject the liquids up from the bottom through the stem and then into the glass and just inside the grooves, and then you suck the drink. So it's a pretty neat little concept. So we did a bunch of testings. We were doing capillary tests and ran a bunch of 3D prints. We're running into funding problems. We couldn't really get enough funding to do the drop tower test or the parabolic flights, but we've had a lot of strong interest, and we had some associates help us do some basic research. But still, it was a neat concept, and we just wanted to have more time and money to really push it to the next level. We got a lot of great media coverage because they love the design. They love the idea of being able to sip a drink in space, have some type of enjoyment on a weightless environment, and just the idea of having a drink in space was just blowing people's minds. It was quite amazing. And we got close. We actually got really close. Several groups we work with were very interested in printing the glass in space. Made in Space was one of them. This is an actual company that does 3D printing in a weightless environment. They created a special machine that can work in that space environment, and also a filtration system to filter out the toxic fumes of printing plastic, because plastic fumes in space is very nasty, very, very nasty. So we got really close. We were going to create a smaller version of the glass to print on one of their early printers. Unfortunately, NASA said no, because, NASA's being NASA. I discovered the hard way that there's a controversy about, drinks in space, sex in space, things that humans do typically on Earth, but I guess are like, you're not supposed to do in space for some reason. Long story, don't have time to get into it. But anyways, so it was nixed. We didn't get it, but it was a great concept. We got really close to flying Virgin Galactic. I got to work with several key people there at the high levels, and we're going to be like the official glass of space and space tourism. It was going to be really close, but timing was bad. In 2014, there was a flight accident, people died, and that just kind of nixed the whole project right there. They stopped talking to everyone. So I was like, oh, well. So we've just had terrible sense of timing throughout this project. C'est la vie. And we learned the hard way about running a business, or, well, how not to run a business. What we were doing was a passion project. It's not true business, really. It only works if you have lots and lots of money up front. So if we can find somebody with lots of wealth who thought this is just a cool thing, then we can make it happen. Also, another thing, you are married to your business partners, so you better be good friends with them or else. Sales, marketing, and business management are just as important as visionary and great designers. We have some fantastic people creating some incredible designs, but we have these other elements that we're lacking in. Also, if you can't do it alone, ask for help. We struggle with a number of things, including our Kickstarter campaign. It was basically a one-man operation. Hi, me, trying to figure out, well, how do you do a Kickstarter campaign? Well, you get a team of people. That's how you do it. Also, egos and personality conflicts can ruin a dream. So we had a lot of close calls, but struggled with certain individuals. Yep, I know my 8 minutes is up. Hang on. And just avoid shiny technology blindness. We were obsessed with 3D printing. 3D printing will cure all the ills. It will solve all the problems. And the reality is, it's just one tool. And we were just so obsessed with one thing, we didn't think about other options. But somehow, I'm not sure why, the program died in late 2015, but all of a sudden out of the blue, the last several months, we've had interest in it. And the designers have gotten together again. And these are some images of a new generation 3D printed glass that's being built right now. We've actually had it involved in several presentations and published in a book called Alcohol in Space. Believe it or not, this is a real book. It was published a few months ago by a guy named Chris Carberry, and actually talks about the many, many attempts over the years for people trying to either fly alcohol in space, drink alcohol in space, growing hops, creating different types of vessels and bottles that can actually share the liquids, the politics and egos behind it, the rules and regulations, all sorts of interesting stories that I never heard of, and suddenly I'm in this book. Surprise, go figure. But if you want to hear about the very interesting little adventures about, trying to get a darn cocktail in space, check this book out, Alcohol in Space. Pretty neat stuff. And that is my presentation.
Thank you, Sam. Do we have any questions? Throw them up in the chat or the Q&A. So Sam, this is going to be a real thing, you think?
This is going to be, right now, it's a real nice hobby. We've got some individuals very interested in the project, and we've done special prints for them. And it's right now just simply under development on our own. We're going to stay very low key. We're going to fine-tune the technology by ourselves. I consider it a glorified art project just because of the fantastic designs. But people keep popping up out of nowhere saying, hey, I like this glass. What can I do with this? Can I fly this? Can I do something with it? So suddenly it starts popping up again. So it's a transforming project, and we're learning new things about zero gravity activities. And the glass is just one of them. We have other concepts in mind we want to do in the future. It's just a matter of funding and timing and stuff like that. And now I'm a dad and I have a family, so it's like complications. But the concepts are out there. And you may see more of this in the future.
Great, thank you, Sam. All right, I think we're out of time, but thank you, Sam. And if you got questions, put them in the chat. Just where we are in the global scheme of tonight, we have 3 more presentations coming up. Next up is Tracy Swedlow, if I'm pronouncing that right. Tracy, are you there?
I'm here.
Hello, hello. So
Hello.
you're an outrage poet, is that what I understand?
Oh, and I decided not to read my poetry, but if anybody wants, it's on that company that starts with the letter A. This is the current collection of poetry that I put out. But it's not science fiction oriented, so I thought I'd read a chunk of my science fiction book and do something for fun. Let's see if this works.
Great.
Does that work? Sort of. Okay. My name is Tracy Swedlow, and I do a bunch of stuff, but in my non-spare time, I write, I paint, I develop musicals. I produce a conference called the TV of Tomorrow Show. Babalu's online here. Thanks to Babalu for the virtual background education. Anyway, so my book, which is not finished, is called Time of Arrival, and I thought I'd read a section of it. It's not the beginning, so I hope you enjoy it. Dara knew other people were starting to transform. The technology to enable it had become commercial in the last few years, and the stories she'd heard about what it did to one's body discussed in UNet Blast sounded amazing. In some ways similar to printing 3D objects, the new process was now available for human bodies. Over the last few decades or so, scientists experimented with the smallest of particles, visible materials, and eventually one-celled bacteria, etc., until plant life, fish, and mammals were transformed successfully. Essentially, what was once considered impossible was now doable. The complete transformation of one's body into quanta bixels, or biological pixels, was a reality now into business. Once a quantum body was created, the original biological unit was terminated via an injection, which would cause the original body's DNA to slowly self-destruct. A copy of the Bixel unit was then encrypted, registered, and stored in human servers for safekeeping. Like much of everything, all things were duplicated, and therefore there was money to be made in the storage business. The original body shriveled until it was only 1/6 the original size and could be discarded as a necessary biological material. That didn't cost much. The entire process was minutely described in a long contract that one had to sign at the start of the process. Transforming the body into bixels wasn't the whole story, though. In addition to basic pixelation, 10 years ago, there was a breakthrough in the understanding of how to manufacture and stretch graphene across large objects to retain an original shape. Once that was possible, many experiments took place on human body parts that were bixeled to test the viability of the advanced graphene. Graphene, if you don't know, is a miracle material that can contain and freeze to a form if designated to do so. The carbon molecules combine to form a sheet so thin that it is one atom or two-dimensional. The amazing thing about graphene is that it is also a highly conducting electric material, so electricity flows through it quickly. In this context, information travels on the surface of the object easily and can command any code or data stored or accessible on any available network. Materials scientists were now monetizing the theory which postulated that all the smallest particles making up the body can be converted into a collection of pixels, or small molecules encoded light that can contain instruction code to act as a molecule machine. These light molecules are capable of containing an enormous amount of enriched data in addition, but pixels also can adapt and change depending on any application that connects to it. The rise of the HPI, or human programming interfaces, was upon humanity, whether they wanted it or not, and the opportunity to capitalize was very apparent to anyone who paid attention and who wanted in on it. Chemical manipulation of molecules was getting very difficult because access to chemical substances was difficult, if not impossible, now that manufacturing was forbidden to insiders inside all complexes on the planet. Only certain companies were given the right to trade now. This fact disrupted the once monolithic pharmaceutical industry, forcing it to consolidate and develop UNET, the wellness ecosystem, through which they could offer their services to the newly emerging and growing population of pixelated humans that needed some chemical augmentation, as the technology was still new. The pixelated being, like any other normal human who has desires to eat, sleep, or go to the bathroom, have sex, and so on, has a large electronic nerve system where each bixicule has memory capabilities, instructions to function, self-healing capabilities, and most important of all, communications capabilities that connects the surface of the being to data information networks. All organs and other internal systems are reproduced as they were and where they were, and they function as best as science is able to understand the appearance of normal. Dara, who had gone through the complete transformation moments before, began to feel something stirring in her body like an enormous ripping. The cocktail of electrons, photons, and muons fizzled and spun into place. Heat from the encoding process rose, stung, and sang until silenced. Gravity took hold and collected all the particles into form. Dara's mind suspended, then reassembled. An oozing of final chemical filled in all the empty spaces. Gradually emerging from the magnetized field, she was now a quantum. The graphene skin kept her from disintegrating. In the back of her mind, somewhere, she vaguely remembered videos that discussed surface tension and how a human unit, or H unit, stayed intact, but she couldn't quite intellectualize it. Standing a few moments to comprehend all this, as her mind continued to solidify, she thought about her previous corporeal body. She knew she had the appearance of solid matter, but now, as a product of light, she felt like light. She was essentially a photon sea that moved and swayed as she moved herself, but it was only definable to her. She could feel, however, the minutest movement of these photons, even if she shifted a millimeter. She tried to keep absolutely still, but it was impossible. She felt this complete urge to move, but wasn't sure if or how it was possible yet. A high-pitched sound brought her out of her mental float. It called her towards the glass door, which she saw, but now it seemed to be made of a harder substance than herself. She hadn't really noticed glass before. She moved slightly towards this chamber where she had stood entirely organic moments before, and then felt a rush of emotion for that flesh and blood person that she wasn't any longer. She also now understood that being organic limited her and all of humanity to a mishmash of vulnerabilities. A voice instructed her to step to the right, to the upper pad. She stepped up and took position. This is your final group lock. Stand immobile. On the dark, rubberized platform with white marks indicating where to be, a bright blue convex field generated by tall cylinders surrounding her shot up from the rim, stayed on, and then turned off with a click. A kind of machine, electro-hum, surrounded her, and ripples in the air emerged like tall snakes that shuddered and reached to the circle rim above. The sound of this process got louder but lower in tone. She knew this was happening to her, but it was happening too fast to feel. She knew that her insides were being readjusted and aligned, and then everything settled into place and locked. Transformation was over. The past distant. The world behind her heavy. Her motherhood irrelevant. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. We need applause here, so everybody has to applaud.
Thanks.
Thank you. That was great. That's part of an upcoming novel, is that right?
Yes.
All right. Do you have a title yet, or?
Right now it's called Time of Arrival.
Got it. Got it. All right.
Although I named it way before that other movie, but here I am. I'm back. I named it way before that other movie called Arrival, but I bought all the domain names, and I got to stick with it now.
All right. Very good. Very good. All right. Thank you. So where we are in the evening, we're kind of running towards a close. We have one announcement from Engineers Without Borders, and then we have a musical interlude from Vale and Marion from Research Publications. So Phil, are you ready? Are you
I
there?
am. Can you
Great.
hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. Well, let me share my screen. So I'm a volunteer with Engineers Without Borders, and had a couple things I want to talk to you about tonight. One is just a quick overview, because I don't think people really have ever heard of Engineers Without Borders. So just going through a couple of our slides here. You might think of Doctors Without Borders, except instead of treating patients, we help communities with their infrastructure. Some examples of stuff we do: we build bridges, we put in solar energy systems, and the project I'm working on is a water system for a small village in Nicaragua. We also do sanitation stuff, things like composting toilets, and it's kind of broken down into 3 different groups. The ones that's probably the biggest one is the International Community Program, which is where we go into villages and communities in these developing countries around the world. We've got 44 different countries, I think, that we're operating in these days. There's also the Engineering Service Corps. So this is more looking at kind of engineering consulting and innovative projects. Actually, one example I can think of off the top of my head is that they're working at a way to decompose all the human byproducts on Mount Everest so that they can actually turn that into fuel for people to cook their food on, is one innovative kind of example. And then the third kind of area that we work in is called the Community Engineering Corps. And this is where we work mostly in the United States. And actually John's, the Boom Project is part of this, working with kind of disadvantaged communities, like you heard about his Boombox project earlier tonight. So that's kind of the stuff we do. We've got over 13,000 members in it. We've got offices in 3 countries, one in Uganda, one in Guatemala, and one in Nicaragua. But we still have projects in, like I said, another 40 countries around the world going on. So lots of interest in it. There's probably a lot more demand that communities have, more than what we can service. But we're continually looking for volunteers and donations that can help with the project overall. But what do I want to talk to you tonight about was a hackathon. So this is new for us. It's the first time EWB has tried doing a hackathon, but we're seeing a lot of our communities around the world having real problems because of the COVID. They don't have a government infrastructure. They don't have medical facilities. They don't have access to masks and face shields. Their water issues are particularly more significant during the time of COVID. You can't even wash your hands easily in many of these places. And sanitation becomes a problem. There's a problem with supply chains, so food security is an issue. I understand in Uganda now, trucks are stopped and quarantined at the border for days and sometimes even a week. And there's issues with theft and stuff in these trucks, and they lose track of the cargo going back and forth. So there's many communities that wait days or weeks before they can get fresh supplies of food in. And then there's healthcare resources. In the US, we've heard all about the issue with ventilators. Gee, if most of these countries even have that problem, some of the biggest issues they have is just getting the PPE for their medical staff, getting thermometers to go and detect if people have fevers or not. And what's been kind of a crisis in many places is oxygen concentrators, for example. Some countries have a good infrastructure. Guatemala, for example, they've got a good industry to provide bottles of oxygen. But at other places, Peru, Nicaragua, for example, that people are dying by the dozens or hundreds because just they don't have access to oxygen, much less the ventilators. So there's a few themes that we're looking at trying to encourage teams to work on during this hackathon. It's scheduled for 2 days, July 11th and 12th. And we're looking for either individuals or even teams that may already have some ideas of some projects that they can sign up here. And we're looking at the output of this hackathon coming out with a PowerPoint kind of package to describe here's what their idea is, here's why it helps with the community. And technology is the technology that we're suggesting. Is it viable? Is it going to work? And do we have a budget? Do we have a schedule for how we can actually develop something and implement it in these developing countries? And looking at a social aspect of it. What will the culture actually accept? I guess an example of that we were quite worried about in many parts of Africa. It's really rare. People don't have the culture of just washing their hands. It's just not done. So earlier in the last couple of months, we put together a hand washing handbook, and we were able to work with our partner communities to convince the local chiefs to go and demonstrate to their community how they wash their hands. And once that happened, the whole community then was able to accept that washing hands is an okay thing to do. And just those simple things like that make a big difference in these communities. So one of the things I'm coming to you guys for, not only if you want to participate in the hackathon, but just this tremendous community of just inventors and smart people who've probably been participating in hackathons before, we're looking at help with being mentors to these teams that we're going to be coming up with. And we're looking at 3 different categories of mentors. One is a technical, and maybe that's most suited for most of the audience here, is the ideas that these teams are coming up with. And by the way, these teams are EWB volunteers, are often their student chapters as well as professionals. So we get a mix of people who are up to date on current technology, but maybe not the experience to actually implement something. And then you got some other older folks, maybe more like me, not so up to speed on the latest technology, but I know how to put a business plan together, and I kind of know what may be possible and what some of the roadblocks may be. Our in-country mentors would usually be somebody, they're probably more of experienced EWB people, to be honest with you in that case, looking at people who've done work, Peace Corps kind of work, or worked in these developing countries. They know some of the cultural issues. They know the political issues. Nicaragua, for example, the government is firing doctors for accepting PPE and other help from supply chains that are not part of the government. The government is looking at it as a threat to their self-interest, that somebody else is trying to take over for them. So they're actually firing these doctors and hospital administrators for accepting PPE. So we're working out some plans to make sure that we get buy-in from the local health ministries for whatever we're doing there, to kind of help ensure that that's more accepted and that they understand what we're trying to do, and that it's not trying to counter the local politicians. And then we're looking for mentors that can help with the business. Gee, what kind of makes sense? What are sources of funding to go and help do this? How can you jumpstart a local manufacturer who maybe is used to making t-shirts, and now you're asking them to make hospital gowns or something? By coming up with a plan where maybe we buy his first set of products coming out of it, you're able to jumpstart them and convince them that they've got a business model that then can be sustained. So these mentors, we're looking at them meeting with maybe several different teams over the 2-day period. For the technical side, we're envisioning having these mentors have maybe a 1-hour session with the teams, just to kind of brainstorm back and forth on what some of their ideas are, and kind of just help coach them on kind of what might make sense, or kind of consider other alternatives. So we're looking at that as being the kind of more significant types of mentors that we're looking for. And then the in-country and the business plans, hey, those will probably be shorter kind of sessions, so we can get by with fewer of those kinds of mentors. And again, they're just kind of helping them clean up their business plans and think of the in-country and the cultural and supply chain kind of issues that are maybe more unique to developing countries. So although we're heavily advertising this within the EWB community, all the volunteers, this is actually an open hackathon and open to anybody, and as well as for our mentors. So you do not have to be an EWB member to participate. We've got some guidelines about how many years of experience, but hey, just look at that as a guideline. We'll be accepting resumes and applications, and we'll try to match up wherever the mentors' kind of capabilities are to the teams that we've got coming up. And I'll post these links here in the chat so you can have access to that. So I guess that's in a nutshell kind of what we do, and what kind of help we're looking for, what you guys might be able to help us with, and be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Phil. That was great. Any questions? And Phil, can you drop your contact information in the chat?
I just did.
Great, fantastic. Miles ahead of me. All right, well, thank you. Not seeing any questions, so I think we're going to move on. This is kind of winding up the official presentation night. Thanks everybody for sticking through with it. There was a lot of different things going on. For our final presentation, we have a musical interlude from Vale and Marion from Research Publications. I was hoping they'd be here to introduce it because I'm not sure what we're in for, but maybe we can just take it away. Seabrook, is that something you can play or?
Yeah, I can play that. I'm just seeing that they're trying to get Vale on here, but I'm not sure if I can find them.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll give them a couple minutes. After this is done, we're going to open up the Zoom to a party line so everybody can hang out. I know we have a lot of presenters from the East Coast. They can leave. They don't have to stick through this to the bitter end because it's getting late over there. But if anybody wants to stay around and chat with the panelists, chat with each other, have a drink, we're going to do that after this last thing.
I think Bill and Marion are there. They might be muted. They're logged in as me.
Okay.
So they're one of the parents.
There we go. All right, I see them.
Everyone wants to be Karen.
Right. Okay, everybody mute. I see them.
I think they're muted.
Yeah, they unmuted themselves, but now they're gone. So we might just need to play the video.
Okay.
If they get it back, they can do an outro.
Okay, perfect, perfect.
You want me to play the video, Karen?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
Roll it, Seabrook. Thank you.
You can protest. To wear a mask, make a cutting-edge sign, but wear your running shoes, they might keep you from dying. But will you protest for years and years? Protest for decades, centuries. Will you protest for years? You've nothing else to do. Your jobs are mostly gone. There's no more school. Helicopters overhead all day and night. It's the new soundtrack, Apocalypse Light. You can protest all you want till the cows come home. But what really changes in the extra long term? Police will shoot people, that's what they're trained to do. But a sheriff just got slaughtered in sleepy Santa Cruz. 600 million guns in America, take heed. More guns than people in the land of the free. And we need to all go green with our energy. As Greta Thunberg said, it's our only destiny. People go hungry every single day, yet millions of tons of food still get thrown away. It's blamed on supply chains that had a big disrupt. When tourism, hotels, restaurants went belly up. When no one's got a job, will rent forgiveness come? Will there be UBI? It works in Finland. Wonder what our future really going to be. Some tech jobs, restaurant work, but lots of delivery. Bring back the WPA, there's plenty to do. Get paid for making art, make the world beautiful. And universal health care, forgive all student loans. They do this in Europe, why not here at home? We need new laws like no more chokeholds. We need wealth tax, nothing left to lose. We need need more education for equality. We need black executives and women CEOs. But will you protest till the end of time? Protest till everything is both yours and mine. Yours, everyone's, everything equality.
Right, fantastic. That was great. That was great. Marion and Vale, are you, I see you there. Can you speak? Can we hear you? Oh, I can't hear you. All right. Well, this kind of concludes the formal dorkbot number 100 and something. People doing strange things with electricity. So thanks everybody for sticking it out. Thanks to all our panelists. Thanks to Karen for putting it together. Thanks to Gray Area, and thanks to Seabrook behind the scenes making this all work. It worked pretty well. Thank you. And I guess now we can open it up to the.
I mean, just one more thing I'd say, Jonathan, is
yes.
for everybody on tomorrow night, we're having the online virtual exhibition opening for our biannual Gray Area Education and Incubator students. That's at, if you go to the Gray Area website, grayarea.org, there's a link on there and you can find it, which opens at 7 o'clock tomorrow night. We have a really cool virtual 3D exhibition space at the theater. So check that out. It's free.
Very nice. Thanks. Thanks.
Thanks for hosting us. And thank you, Jonathan, for pro MC.
All right. Well, do my best.
And all the speakers.
Yeah, thanks to all the speakers. So
thank you.
Right. Seabrook, can we, I'm not sure what button we push to let people in, but
yeah, I'm letting everybody in. The way it works with the webinar is I can only let them in one at a time. So I got about 20 people in so far, and the rest of you will be in soon. And you can all unmute and turn your video on now. It's open talk time.
I see a Babaloo.
Yes. I am here.
Yay,
I am here. That was really wonderful seeing everybody. It was really great. It was great. And thank you, Karen. You're looking fine from Tahoe. Any bear sightings out there?
I heard the dogs barking. There might be one.
No, no longer muted.
Oh, and there's Vale and Marion. Yay.
Thank you.
Good job, Jonathan. That was great. That was great. I'm glad I joined in this time. Sort of
it was something they were doing. It wasn't I.
Hey, Anouk, can you say something? Because I didn't take a picture of you.
I can, yes. I just saw John joining from San Francisco as well.
Oh, nice.
Oh, John's there.
Hello.
Put some light on your face, little countryman.
Yeah, John looks like a mountain man.
He's a Unabomber. He's a Unabomber.
John,
we have to talk
grown
about
zucchinis.
your building.
No, he's Farmer John now.
Farmer John now. There it goes.
Hi, Michael. Hi, John. Hi, Kevin.
Hi.
Hi,
How you
Babaloo.
doing?
Yeah, trying to
Tracy.
say, hey, there's a thing in the chat for you to join. But see, Karen sent us her link. I think that's one of the
Oh my
problems.
God, John, you have the hugest beard.
Yeah.
Fluff that beard. Get it up close to us. Let's see that face there, John.
It's the COVID look.
Wow.
COVID love.
I can even get a little mustache action there. Look at that.
Oh, there we go.
Oh, wow.
Just need a couple
Spaceman.
of daisies.
Yeah, let's see.
It takes a few years to get the hang of it, but yes.
Yeah, well, it blends in, you know.
Do people have questions?
When's this all going to be over?
It'll never be over. You're locked in forever, dorkbot. Never get out of here, ever.
We're now avatars.
Vale, you usually have the your fingertips on the latest and greatest. What new stuff do you know about happening or great things to tune into?
Yeah.
Geez, I feel so out of date. I basically get my news from Financial Times, which I doubt if anyone here ever reads.
That's why we're counting on you. Fill us in.
Well, it's just a bunch of dire predictions about, the economy. And I mean, if you really read it, it should be called Financial Crimes newspaper, not Financial Times. They have the direst predictions, but you don't read these things in the Chronicle or even online. So I don't know. You can look at the Financial Times every day. I don't know if it's free or not, but it says ft.com/daily newspaper.
Yeah, I've read it a few times. It's pretty good.
So is research taking a break,
Want to say hi to
or are they on furlough?
Well, we're trying to work on books, but everything takes. Oh yeah, we just did 2 zines. So
and another
really?
production.
I know
they're writing
done about
songs,
15
Michael.
songs.
They're writing songs, Michael. Pay attention. Come on. That's just what they did. That's what they're doing.
Right. And booking their upcoming tour. Those are fabulous. That was fabulous.
John, what are you guys working on? It looks cool, whatever it is.
Oh, our spaceship?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're working on the Empire again. Upgraded the speaker system, so we're now going to have a subsonic, lower than hearing speaker on it that'll rattle your guts.
An LRAD?
Yeah, and then we have one of those too. I have a 4-foot diameter. It's a dual parabolic dish sound beam system that's 143 dB that you can hear for miles, and that'll be stuck right in the engine, point blank in people's faces.
Did you
Those are
finally make
better than
brown
smoke signals.
vision?
We can all meet together again. You and Mark should have an LRAD competition.
Oh yeah,
Audience in the middle.
Yeah, this is the kind of system that we could be at opposite ends of the Bay Area and probably hear each other.
Are you where?
Yeah, weird.
Where?
Wow. Right there and there.
I have some brain research update if you're interested. So, I've been studying plankton for a long time. Now I'm looking at zebrafish. And what's cool is the babies, the larvae, are transparent. And so you can actually use fluorescent calcium dye. So you can watch the neurons flash. So you can do full brain imaging of live baby fish. And they get depressed, and they also like to trip. So people give them MDMA and LSD and alcohol and any water-soluble drug. You just put it in the fish tank and you dose them. And a COVID note, the research shows face masks work. So that's the mantra. When you think COVID, think face mask.
All right, good to know.
That's pretty stunning research. I was curious, a question for Anouk. I've seen the mist dress before, and the containing of the fog that kind of emerges. Is there any insights that you've gotten about, how to control fog in windy environments at all?
Hey, Rich. Good to see you.
There.
Hey, it's awesome. I think Alex is also online, and many more of you guys. I miss you guys in San Francisco. Yeah.
Miss you too.
Yes,
John, yay! Yeah, I think like working with smoke, it's hard to contain it like outdoors. What I always have, a lot of people or fashion magazines want to do things outdoors, and then it's always like, well, like there should not be winds and all of that stuff. Like blasting the smoke at like pulsing it sort of is kind of a cool effect about what contains it better. So like outdoor, definitely I'm still working with that, like working with organic shapes sort of, where when you push the smoke out and you make it turn a little bit, that makes it swirl you know, so it mounts it better around the body. So my first smoke dress, it really pushed it out sort of, whether now I use the 3D print of the hips and the space in the hips sort of, you know, in order to push it out, make it go round, and then it goes through the lines in the dress. So I mean, I made 6 of them, and yeah, it's always like it's always pulling it out sort of.
Yeah, I was thinking it could also be some mask version that actually demonstrates what could happen with our own breath in light of COVID and
that,
spread
yeah,
it. That could be.
Also, there's a lot with the COVID and yeah, actually the vapor kind of stuff. It can also be the opposite way of spreading it. So I didn't want. I was thinking of that stuff, but I didn't really want to look into that because I don't want to cause too much trouble here.
Well, if you had a surgical mask with a surgical mask that would blow out fog that would show the radius of the
potential range.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
You could also blast out confetti so it like stays on people, so it's very clear. So they got your cooties.
Incredible confetti.
Yeah, good suggestion.
Maybe we could combine your technology with some propane blast.
Let's burn it down, John.
Yeah.
Now you're talking.
Stay the fuck away. Fire. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or you could be a hand sanitizer dispenser if you don't mind being felt up. That isn't very PC, I know, sorry.
I'm just have a cocktail dress that injects liquids for like drinking, so maybe that could be a hand sanitizer instead.
Yeah, you see a lot of like the alcohol companies like merching that. So yeah, I mean, so many possibilities. I would like to see all of your guys become fashion designers and start your ideas.
It could be dual purpose. You can take it out and clean your hands too.
I was approached today by a senior home to develop lighting for the seniors. And I was thinking of a dual purpose light bulb that would give light when you wanted it, and when no one was in the room, it would change to UV. So having a light bulb that would be able to do both, it would then clean the room and when people weren't there.
Always thinking, John.
I thought UV was being used for the other purpose that UV does.
Yeah, which is
shows up certain kinds of stains.
Right. In the senior center.
Not in the senior center.
But it sterilizes it though, so it's safe.
Oh, UVC, yeah, well, yeah.
And it's dangerous. You don't want it to malfunction because that's really nasty.
Yeah.
Speaking of lighting, I have a little fun weekend project that I threw together. I had the old Apple time capsules, the tall, the really tall router. And I stopped using that a few years ago. I made a case for it though, out of a TARDIS, which is appropriate, an Apple time capsule instead of TARDIS. So I had no use for it and it's just been pretty. And then I threw this together over the weekend.
Oh, cool.
Oh, that's cute.
You got to keep talking so we can see it.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody put him on mainframe.
Go to Hollywood Squares view. I mean, gallery view.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, it's kind of fun and it's nice when it pulses. I can turn this back on. Let's see if it'll pulse.
Oh, there we are.
Yeah. Anyway, it's quite simple. Whoa, that's bright. It's just a LifeX, and then I designed a mount for it for the center, and it's got little paper windows and stuff for the diffusion.
Did you 3D print the box?
Yeah, the whole thing's 3D printed. In fact, the inside's really interesting. Let me turn on a light that's not offensive. One sec. All right. Yeah, so the box is actually really interesting. If I can get appropriate lighting for it. Yeah. You can see the inside. So it's support free. It just keeps going in on itself in order to make it work.
Nice.
Yep. Anyway.
Isn't that how they built chapels in like the 1500s?
And the 2020s, apparently.
Those 3D printers back in the 1500s, they were very slow.
Well, they printed stone though, so they lasted a long time.
The irony of this is that I've never owned an actual 2D printer. So I had to draw up the logo for the front door by hand, and it looks terrible.
Oh my God.
Well, it's good seeing everybody. I don't know if we're going to do a real live dorkbot, but this is kind of cool because then we can get
organizing
everywhere.
I have a question for Sam. So I presume that cocktail glass works on the principle of surface tension, where the cocktail will, with the alcohol, it's lower surface tension, but it will cling to the veins of the glass. What's to keep it from spilling over the side? Is the outside made of a different material that is less conducive to surface, or gives less surface tension to the liquid?
So it's kind of a balancing act. As long as you can keep the liquid just at the groove level or below, you're fine. But if it gets too high, it starts turning into it's theorizing, turns into a bubble. And then if you shake it, it could glom over the outside of the glass. So we're still trying to research better ways of balancing, you know, how much is too much, how much is too little. I mean, the grooves are a pain in the butt to 3D print, but they hold the glasses very well. We've even trying to find ways to keep the grooves smaller inside the glass and have a bigger curvature, so we can manage the fluid flow inside. But there's a balance here of, you know, if it's too much of like a normal glass, then it won't move anywhere. It'll just stay in one place. But with the grooves, it'll pull it up, the liquid up more, closer to the edge, so your mouth can get closer to it. And then you have to suck the liquid to actually make it move. Right. It won't move.
Because you're gonna want to be able to cruise around the space station to chat up all the people. So you have to be moving with this thing, which is you don't want to move the glass out from underneath the liquid.
Right. I mean, if you shake it really hard, like anything, it will fly and scatter all over the place.
Well, yeah, but you got to keep the tang there.
The challenge is trying to find a balance of how much is too much, how much is too little, and then not have a situation where you